So to set up Stable Diffusion, first you would Google Stable Diffusion webui. The first result will be Automatic1111. You go to installation and running and follow the instructions. First you install Python 3.10.6. It's a little bit over down here, and you would just download Windows installer and install it. Next. When installing it, make sure to flag this add Python 3.10.bat. That's important. Next, just you would install Git. So that's easy, just 64-bit for Windows setup, and next. When you're finished installing Git, then you'll be able to use this command. You would go to the folder where you want to install Stable Diffusion. So for me, it's my documents and GitHub, but it can be any folder. And then you would type cmd here to open the command prompt in this location, and you would paste git clone command. This will install the basic launcher and installer for everything else. It will be done quite quickly. Okay, it's done, and so we have a folder now called webui. In this folder you will find webui-user.bat. So you would open that with the text editor. I would recommend to paste command line arguments xformers and medvram. Xformers is an optimization which will make it run faster and require less memory, and medvram will make it run a little bit slower and require even less VRAM. When you've done that, you just run the webui-user.bat, and then because this is the first time, it's gonna take a long time to install and download everything, maybe like 5 minutes or something, depending on your internet speed. The installer will place one model into the Stable Diffusion folder. It's going to be Stable Diffusion 1.5. All the other ones you will want to download yourself. Okay, so the installation is finished. So now it says it's running on local URL, and it gives you an IP address. So you just copy that IP address and you paste it into the browser, and that's your webui. That's how you use Stable Diffusion. I recommend free extensions, which are crucial for me. So we go to Extensions tab and we go to Available, and we load all of the extensions. Just search for ControlNet and webui ControlNet. Install ControlNet. This is the extension that give you greater control over the output. Especially you can use 3D models as input, because you'll be able to use depth maps, normal maps, and copy aspects of some images into other images. The ControlNet would, for example, allow you to texture a 3D model. Okay, so it's been 3 minutes and this still hasn't installed. That's broken. We'll try to reload it like this. Just gonna try again. Available. Let's try again. Install. A minute later, still not working. We can go here and restart UI. Maybe that will help. Oh wow, refused to connect. Guess we'll turn it off and turn it on again. There we go. Let's go to extensions. Available. Where's it? It's gone. What? Ultimate as the upscale. Let's install that one. Ah, it's gone, probably because it's installed. That's why it's gone. This one only shows the extensions which are not installed. Okay, that worked. We will also want dynamic prompting. Dynamic prompts here, this one. We will see the installed ones. Yeah, we have ControlNets here, dynamic prompts, and ultimate upscale. So we would apply and restart UI. And now they should all work. Yeah, see, we can see ControlNet here. For ControlNet, we also need to download the models. We just Google ControlNet models, you'll probably just find it right away. So you would go to Files and Versions and Models, and then you would just download all of these here. After you finish downloading them, you would put them in the extensions, ControlNet, and Models. I already have them, so I can just move them over. There we go. Next thing, I would go settings and actually fix all of the default settings that I don't like. I want to use the pattern where after the number of the image it will be the seed and then the CFG and the steps. Those are some of the properties of image generation, so it's easier to tell when you're comparing images what is what. And next is always save all generated image grids. That's the thing I disable because I don't want image grids at all. Next is save a copy of image before doing face restoration. For all of these I enable them. It's a two-step process, so in case you don't like the second step you still have the first one. This one, if the saved image file is above the limit, or it's either width or height or above the limits, save downscaled copy as a JPEG. So I never want JPEGs. I always want PNGs because they're lossless, so that's disabling that. And then there's this option that doesn't actually work. Use upscale or name as file name suffix in the extras tab, which would be really cool to have, and it used to work, but it's broken currently. And do not add watermarked images is a joke, so it doesn't matter if you turn it on or off. Next is a path for saving. So by default, Stable Diffusion will output into these folders, but I prefer all of my images to go to my Stable Diffusion folder here, for grids as well, although I don't want grids. But if I wanted to enable grids, I would want them in the same folder. And then I just paste the same one here as well, if I'm using the save button. So you have to disable this one as well. Save grids to a subdirectory if you don't want grids to be generated and saved, which I don't want because I'm making a huge amount of generations, and huge grids take a while to generate and I'm not using them anyway. So another thing thing you can do here to make it searchable is show all pages, and now all of these tabs are here, so you can search for the options you're looking for. For example, I'm looking for monetization option for K-samplers, and I want to enable this because it will improve the quality, no real cost when using K-samplers, and I do like using the K-sampler. It's really good. Show grid in the results for web, so I disable that one. Disable grids even more. I disable the full page image viewer here. Just clicking on a thumbnail of an image will make it big, but it will make it cover everything. You won't be able to click anything until you close it, so I just simply don't need it. Next thing I disable is show live previews. This can be useful sometimes, but it makes it a little bit slower, and if you mostly don't need it, then you can disable it or enable it, whatever. Maybe keep it enabled at first if you want, then disable it if you find that you're not using it. It means that you will see a blurry version of the image as the image is being generated, but to see it often enough for it to be useful, it has a performance hit. Otherwise, you're just seeing a blurry mess that doesn't really tell you much. And then I disable this option as well because it's grid related. Enable post-processing operations in text-to-image and image-to-image tabs. I add upscale here. This is every time you create something, it can be automatically upscaled if you want. So you're basically enabling yourself to use that option. And the last option I customize here is the multi-ControlNet. So by default you can use one ControlNet, and if you increase the number here to 5, for example, now I can use 5 ControlNets in parallel. So I can have one of them be depth, the other one be normal, and then have the edge detection. And then all of them can work in parallel to provide even more control. It's very, very useful. So that's why I set this to 5. Basically you set it as much as you need it, but more than 5 is kind of an overkill. You'll never want to use that many and clutter the UI to have too many. And when you're finished, you just apply settings and you reload UI. And for your convenience, here is the list of all the settings I changed. I recommend you keep the GPU memory visible while you're working so that you can know when you're gonna hit the ceiling. I'm using a system informer. This is an advanced task manager, but you can use a task manager as well, and you're looking at dedicated memory graph. Here we can have a prompt there on the tree, for example. One thing that's important to do when experimenting is to lock the seed. So seed -1 will mean it's going to be random. You can set it by clicking this button. You can click this other button to use the seed from previous generation. We don't have a previous generation right now, so we'll just put any number that will lock the seed. So when we change parameters, we'll actually see the effect that change of parameter or change of prompt is having, rather than having the randomness inserted into every iteration that we do. So let's say first we want to understand what are sampling steps. So let's generate one image. Here we have a bear under a tree. If we have low number of sampling steps, we'll get a much worse image, much faster, unusable. So if you want to explore what the whole range of this does, you can most easily, you can use a script down here, and you can choose what you want to explore. I want to explore different steps. So I will type, I want values from 1 to 30 in increments of 1. Now this sampling step slider will be ignored, and we just press generate and we wait a little bit. Okay, it finished rendering, but I'm actually gonna render some more of them. Okay, so now we have 60 images in total. So at the beginning, of course, the image is unusable, but as we move up the number of steps, the image keeps changing, but it keeps getting better. We can see more definition. It comes to resemble a photo more and more. Around 48 steps, somewhere here. It's pretty good. As you keep going, it doesn't really keep getting better, it just keeps becoming different. And you could get that much cheaper by just changing the seed. There's a diminishing return to a number of steps. That's all that really matters here. Let's see what the batch count and batch size are. First, we'll disable the script here because the script disables the batch size. So let's say batch count, you want to generate 2 images of the bear. Oh, I forgot to randomize this. So now we're generating 2 images and it's taking around 7 seconds per image. Okay, so we got 1 image here, and that's because we have sampling steps set to 38. That's why it's taking so long, but we're getting good images in the result. So let's say we want to make more images, but we can do them actually in parallel with using batch size. Be careful about this one because it will, as you can see here, it's going to take up some more memory, and if it takes up all of memory, it might crash or just freeze until the memory becomes available. Upside is that as soon as this finishes, we'll have 80 new images to go. So this was actually 4 times faster. Okay, so we'll take one of these images to demonstrate the effect of a CFG scale. So I'll take this image because it's pretty nice, and we can go to the PNG info tab and we can drop that image here and we can click send to text to image. So now the seed from that image, prompt and everything, all the settings will automatically be copied. If we just click generate, we'll get that exact same image. And let's set the XYZ script to 0.1 to 15 in steps of 0.3, and we'll choose the CFG scale. Let's generate. Okay, it's finished. So once again, I went a little bit further and went on to generate up to CFG Scale 50 to better demonstrate. So at the beginning, you can see the image is more creative. The AI gets more freedom to decide what it wants, and the image tends to be lower in contrast. It's like a clarity slider is low. So the more you go on, so now we're at CFG Scale 6, 7, which is around default, you get a more like normal photographic image that more matches our prompt. So the further you go on a CFG scale, so now we're around 20, the more image gets contrasty, the AI tries to match our prompt better. It gets more constrained, and at the same time it goes more insane. So most of these results are unusable, but it really depends on your perspective. So you could say that the AI is truly exploring the meaning of what it means to be a bear under a tree. Okay, so now we generate our picture of a bear under a tree, and it's at resolution 512 by 512, and we want to make it bigger, right? We want to get the same image at a higher resolution. One way to do that is to use high-res fix, because if we just upscale it directly, 1024, 1024, we will actually get a different image for a couple of reasons. CFG scale behaves differently at different resolutions, and you get a completely different noise. So the seeds don't translate between the resolutions at all. So here you can see that we got a completely different image, but we want this image at a higher resolution. So how do we do that? Well, we have to leave this at 512 by 512, and we can use high-res fix to do that. This is how much we want to upscale it. Let's say we want to upscale it by 2, and this will take more VRAM. It will take exactly the same amount of VRAM as if you type in 1024 over here. I'd recommend not using the latent upscalers, but using one of the other ones. LDSR is great, but it's extremely slow. It's 70 times slower than any of the other ones, because it's actually a Stable Diffusion upscale. It's not a ESR GAN upscale. The other ones are mostly ESR GAN upscales, and that means that they use a more traditional, faster neural network. And I recommend downloading more of them. So you can go to model database on the Upscale wiki, and you can find for different purposes different upscalers. So you can read through all of that, or you can just come here and compare different ones. How LSDR, for example, compares to the base image, or how it compares to ESR GAN. And so you have the download links over here as well. So when you finish downloading all of the good ones, I would recommend Full Hardware Macri, NMKD Super Scale, and Ultra Sharp. The basic ESR GAN can also be great. So these are the ones that I have. So I'm going to move them from my old installation into the new one that we made, the Reload the UI to apply changes. We'll go to PNG info and load our image here. Send to text to image, and we continue right where we left off. So let's say we want to use NMKD's Super Scale. That's a pretty good generic upscaler, and generate. Okay, so it's finished. It took considerably longer, and this is the result. We got the original image saved, and we got the upscaled image saved. As you can see, it's still quite different. To make it more similar to original image, if we want that, we would reduce the denoising strength to something lower, like 0.4. You could go down to 0.2 if you want nearly exactly the same image. Okay, so our image is finished, and we can see the result here. So as you can see, this one looks like the same image. Before it was a different one. So the more creativity you give it, the chances are you're gonna get better image, but more different one. You can do the same process as a two-step process. By upscaling the image yourself first, you can use the extra step to just upscale the image. For example, I can put this here. I can upscale it to MKD, and let's do it 2 times, and I can generate an upscaled image. When I generate an upscaled image, it will appear here, unfortunately, instead of here. Kind of hate that, but I don't know what to do about it. So now that we have the image here, I can rename it. There we go. Right, so this is a pure upscale without Stable Diffusion to upscale it. So you can see this also is pretty good, but it can only go so far before you get upscaling artifacts and such. However, you can use this upscaled image as a source image where you are in image to image. So you would put this, our base image, to PNG info. So you would send to image to image. So now all of our data is copied from text to image to image to image. And so here we would type the resolution that we want, and we would use the denoising strength here in the same way that we use it here. This is the same denoising strength, exactly the same parameter. Now we're not doing the 2 steps at the same time. Now we're doing 1 step at a time. So we can iterate on the second step more easily that way. Also, we can demonstrate what it would be like at a very low denoising strength of 0.15. Okay, so let's generate. So you can see the difference now that it made. Now that we added an upscaled image as a source. Oh, this is without upscaling the image first, at using a low CFG scale. So using the upscaler before feeding the image in actually allows us to keep low denoising strength and keep the sharpness, but it's still different from the upscale version here. If we increase the denoising strength, we can get something looks a little bit nicer. Okay, it's finished quite quickly. So I'm noticing that when I'm not using high-res fix here, but I'm doing it step by step, it seems to be working faster. So that's how you can do upscales. Another way to do upscale is to go here and use Ultimate as the upscale script. This one will kind of do the similar thing, except it will split the image into tiles and then press them each separately and then put them together. At that point, you have to use this half tile offset pass to hide those tiles and the settings for hiding them. Sometimes it's impossible to hide them, sometimes it's very easy. So of course you can restore faces here. If you're making faces, that can be very helpful. It does an extra pass of fixing the faces, and tiling is for tiling textures. Okay, so I'll show you the plugin dynamic prompts now, for which it's very useful to explore the space of possibilities. So you go to extensions, dynamic prompts, and you'll find the Wildcards folder here. It's empty by default, and we'll go to the same folder in my old installation, dynamic prompts and wildcards. So I'll just copy all of my wildcards over. We have the wildcard manager because we installed the plugin. So now these are all of the wildcards that we have down here. As you can see, adjective beauty, adjective horror. So we have the same ones up here. And that's just a text file with words right under each other. It's a list of words. And then you can call upon that list of words by using a syntax that you can actually see right here. 2 underscores. I have a colors wildcards file. So you could just type colors and then you're gonna get a colors bear under the tree. So now if we create a couple of images of bear, you'll see that we'll get different colors of bear. Let's make more. Let's make 9. Okay, they're finished. So now you can see, you can go to PNG info to see what prompt was actually. So this one was dark slate blue bear under a tree. This is a coral bear under a tree. A light gray bear under a tree. So we just change that one word. We can explore different colors of bear. So that, let's say we're not sure if we want a bear or maybe we want a cat. So we can do this. The syntax, so bear and then vertical slash or whatever is it called, and put it in the brackets under a tree, and maybe we're not sure if we want a tree or airplane. Now let's generate. To explain, this syntax means that sometimes we'll get a bear, sometimes we'll get a cat. It's like a 50-50 chance. We can add more things. So for example, if we add a list of 4 or 5 things, then we'll get one of those 4 or 5 things. You can also leave an empty string. That way you can knock out one of the meanings. So this is the dynamic prompt extension. We can see that it's enabled. If it's not enabled, then the syntax would not work. Oh, and I can see already that it's not working because I totally messed up. I've used the wrong brackets. So I'm gonna press interrupt here, and I'm gonna change regular brackets to curly bracket. Generate. Okay, so now we can kind of see what we're getting. So sometimes it's a cat, and sometimes it's a bear, sometimes it's a tree, sometimes it's an airplane, and if we look at PNG info, dark steel blue bear under the airplane, it really doesn't know how to handle that. So the Stable Diffusion version 2 has a better language interpreter. So if you gave it sentences like that, it's going to be much more likely to correctly interpret them. While the Stable Diffusion 1.5, which we're using here, this model, it has a better sense of art, and most community models are 1.5, but it doesn't have such a good sense of language. A cool feature here is that in the prompt magic is attention grabber. So if you use this one, it will randomly assign importance to the words up here. So for example, we can assign more importance to the, let's say we want a masterpiece, and then we really want a masterpiece. We really don't care so much about the rest of the prompt. We just want to focus on this part. We could put brackets around it, and that's just part of this web UI. And the more brackets you would put, the more stronger the effect. So triple brackets would be 1 times 1.3. But when it gets too many brackets, it's easier to put colon and then just 1.3. It has the same effect. So you can put like 2 or something, and you will get a really strong effect. Usually over 1.5 or 1.6 you start getting the same artifacts that you would get with CFG scale being really high, so it becomes unusable. And so if you have a large prompt with 20 words or so, as is usually the case, using the prompt magic down here, attention grabber will just add this syntax to a random word. So if you're generating hundreds or thousands of images, you're gonna get more variety, which is very useful for exploring concepts. So the images we generated right here are not very impressive. So how would we get impressive looking images? One way is to be really creative and work hard on your prompts, write long, elaborate prompts and experiment a lot with them. And another way is to use different models and to use textual inversions and Loras. Hypernetworks are basically the same thing as Loras, which are less popular, so you can just focus on textual inversions and Loras. So what are they? This text that we wrote here, that's a text, and then it becomes numbers in in the language that the AI can understand, which is much more expressive than the words are. And that's a description of the image that the AI is trying to create in numbers. So textual inversion is that description in numbers. So it's like adding an extra prompt next to your prompt, but the type of prompt which cannot be expressed in words. It's possible to train or extract this type of data and tweak it and then use it. It's also possible to put it to define something really bad and put it in negative prompt. So most of the textual inversions that I use are negative ones. So you would put them here, like easy negative, and it would make the image much better because it would move it away from all of the bad looking, not aesthetically pleasing concepts. And Loras are like mods for models, and checkpoints are the models themselves. Right now we have one model loaded and we only have one model installed. We want to download more models to explore how they are different and find better ones basically, and the default one is not so good. The best place to download and find all that is to go to Civitai. They are ordered by popularity all time, so you can, the top ones are actually really good, Chill Out Mix and Deliberate here. So you would click on it and you can see that it's based on Stable Diffusion 1.5. You can see that it's a checkpoint merge, which means that it's a whole model, which is also obvious by the download size. Download size is 2 GB, so you just download it here. If you're looking only for Loras, those are like mods, where you can have a model train to draw this one specific character, and then associate that character with a specific word, or a specific style. So you could have an arcane style. Textual inversions, you should get some negative ones. Here you have bad picture, negative embedding for Chill Out Mix, easy negative. This is the one I use most. It just makes the images way better. You have a user submitted gallery down here under every model, where you can see the results that people had with it. I already have those downloaded. I would just go here to my old installation, and I would go to models, and I would go to Stable Diffusion. So this folder is for checkpoints, and checkpoints are models. They are huge. So I would just copy all of them. Here we got 66 GB of models. And when we go to Loras are much smaller. So I got a couple of them. They are around 150 megabytes, and these are the textual inversion embeddings. Embeddings and Loras, so textual inversions and Loras, are limited to the version of Stable Diffusion model that they are trained on. So the Stable Diffusion 1.5 Loras and textual inversions will only work with Stable Diffusion 1.5 based models, and same goes for 2.1. We can click refresh, and now we have a lot more models. If we go here, there's nothing here. Let's refresh. Now we have a lot of textual inversions, and we have a lot of checkpoints. Checkpoints are models, so this tab shouldn't really exist. It's pointless. You can use this drop down, it makes more sense. We can choose some better models, and each model has a different kind of purpose or goal, and you should read about that at the models page. Okay, so to demonstrate a little bit, let's go back to our prompt, a bear under a tree, but let's use Mainamix model. Okay, so generate. Here we go. Now we have a really different image compared to what we were getting by default. It's much more aesthetically pleasing and it's completely different style. And so if we want to make this picture better, it's very small. We want to just be able to see bigger pictures really quickly. We can just enable Upscaler by default here. We could do Ultra Sharp. That one really doesn't change the image much. It's very soft and smooth and fine and detailed. Just generate. So now we'll be generating the same image again because we have the same seed, except after it's generated it will immediately be upscaled. And that didn't work as expected. Oh, I know why it didn't work. Okay, so let's go to PNG info, and you can actually see that if we go here, we have a bear under a tree, but tree has a attention of 1.41 or emphasis. And if we go here, we have an emphasis on a bear under a tree. So even though they're same seed, and we thought they were the same because we had this add-on attention grabber enabled in the dynamic prompts, that's why we got a different result. So we would go to PNG info. We would drop it here, send to text to image. So now we have the same seed that we use one, but we also have that emphasis baked into the prompt. So now we have this disabled. Now we can generate. So as you can see, this is the effect of that the upscale has. It's definitely better, but it's also not as good as the native. So let's compare it to high-res fix. We'll disable upscaling, otherwise we'll just upscale it after the upscale fix, and we'll end up with a 4K image. Let's use the same one that we used down there, Ultra Sharp as our base, and denoising strength to 0.4 should give us minimal differences, some kind of good balance, I expect, while still being creative enough to look good. Now that we are comparing, we got a version before, high-res fix and after, but let's say we only want to compare these two. So easy way to do that is I change this size, and then I can more easily go up and down to compare those sizes. I think one of them was upscaled to 4 times. No, one of them is upscaled. Yeah, one of them was upscaled to 4 times to 2K, one of them to 1K, so it's not a fair comparison. So let's fix that. So let's upscale this to 4 times also. And I think we'll have enough VRAM because we have Xformers installed. Okay, it's finished. It took 1.5 minutes or something. Oh, that's cool. See, this is the image that we just upscaled. This is the image which we upscaled 2 times with Stable Diffusion, and this is 3 times with Stable Diffusion. So as you can see, it's a little bit different image when you're comparing this one and this one, but it's a big difference in quality compared to just upscaling. It just can't be matched generating natively at high resolution. LDSR would get you a better result though, because let's compare that quickly. So we'll take this one and LDSR and generate, and that will also take at least a minute. Oh, and because this is the first time I'm using LDSR on this installation, it's actually downloading 2 GB model. Okay, so that's finished. Now it ended up in the root folder right here. I'm just gonna rename it and move it back here for easier comparisons. So as you can see, that's the LDSR version, but it's only 1K. Isn't it supposed to be 2K? Oh, that's because we have number 2 here. We should have number 4 here. Press generate and wait again until it generates. Okay, so that took 3 minutes. Our image is here again. So we rename it, we move it back, and now we can compare it. So now you can see that this one is much more similar to our original LDSR. So LDSR is pretty much the best that's possible to do while staying true to the original. And then LDSR is Latent Diffusion Super Resolution. So both of these are actually using Stable Diffusion to upscale, just in a different way. And this way is obviously more powerful, but also much more fiddly, and it's much more limited in terms of resolution when it comes to GPU memory. Let's demonstrate what happens if we try to directly generate at high resolution. Instead of using high-res-fix, we'll just put 1024 first, 1024, and just generate this same image and see what happens. So we got this. Still pretty good. The statics of this one are better, but still this is coherent at least. What if we increase that to 2048? So that was the resolution that we upscaled to. Okay, it's finished. Now we got this. Now we have a lot of repetitions and nonsense going on. It's still a cool looking image, you know, but it's not as usable as the other ones. That's the difference. That's why we first do a small resolution image, then turn it into this, instead of directly doing this. You'll also notice that this has a better contrast, and this is because the CFG scale interacts with resolution. To recreate this type of contrast at high resolution, we would probably have to push up the CFG scale. For fun, let's try 2880 by 2880 to see what will happen. This is usually the highest resolution I can go to, but we can't actually go to that resolution. So there's 2 ways to get around that. One is to use inspect element and just change it right here. You also have to change it on the slider as well. That's if you don't want to wait, just want to immediately increase the resolution. That's how you can do it. But you can also go to the config file, UI config.json, and find text to image width maximum and text to image height maximum. You can do the same for image to image. Here it is. Okay, now we posted it. We reload UI, go text image, and now both of our limits are extended. We can restore where we were, drop it to PNG info. Let's do our resolution, the highest one that I had luck going in the past, 2880 by 2880. So I should probably turn off my Chrome completely at this point. You can see here, while it was in previous generation, it was not spending a lot of VRAM. At the end, this spike jumped all the way to 22.5 gigabytes VRAM. Even though it looks like it's not using much, it's gonna spike, and we have to have a space for that spike for it to work. Okay, I turned off everything, even Blender and Discord, so hopefully it will work now. These error messages up here, you can ignore them. It's an error that there's an error message there. And it worked. As you can see, it was definitely necessary to turn off Chrome and everything, as when it spiked, it filled up all the VRAM. This is a result, and it's pretty great. Except it's crazy. It's just great when it comes to details. It doesn't make that much sense. And you can do any aspect ratio. You don't have to keep it square. This is kind of an upper limit what creates reasonable compositions. Let's type like a princess. Okay, so this is what we got. Now we can experiment to see how it would be influenced by easy negative, for example. First we click down here, and then we click easy negative. Now it's added here. So that's a textual inversion, which would steer it away from things that look bad. We have the same seed, so we're just experimenting what easy negative does. Here it's finished, and we got a totally different image. Having 2 characters is a result of wide aspect ratio. But image has a better defined contrast now than it did before. Let's say we use very bad image negative instead. We got something different. As you can see, it's similar to this. It's a more aggressive textual inversion. Might be better in this situation. It did create 1 character, and the contrast and colors look better. Even the composition might look better, but that's subjective. You can also use both at the same time, and you can use all of them at the same time, but I wouldn't recommend it. You're gonna get nightmare results. With 2, we got some kind of hybrid between those 2 styles, but the contrast and colors are now a little bit too strong. You can add brackets around, and you can put 0.8 semicolon 0 0.8. Both of these negative embeddings are going reduced to 80% of their strength. There we go. We fixed it. So this was not that great, but this is pretty much spot on. It's even better than this one. It has a feeling of this one, except the style in here of this one. So we combined them in a pretty successful way. So that's how you would use textual embeddings. And then let's add a Lora as well if we want. Dpep, for example. Generate. This Lora is trained to add background detail everywhere, you know, the city kind of style. There we go. We got this. So way too strong. So we could put 0.5 here. We did still get princesses, right? They have crowns. There we go. Let's delete this one for easier comparing. And so this is what we got. Different style introduced. And then we could just explore different weights of different Loras and textual inversions to slide between different mixes of styles. And the same thing we could be doing with prompts, except writing text is more limited compared to this. And the best thing, of course, is doing both at the same time. Let's also add noise offset. Noise offset is a way to get contrasty images, or very bright or very dark images. So now we got too much again. Too much of the good thing. There is a model that has this noise offset integrated. It's called Illuminati Diffusion and it's trained on top of Stable Diffusion 2.1. And it comes with 3 textual inversions that are meant to be used with it. So when we load it, we need to click refresh. Now we only have ones which are compatible with it. These 3 are actually compatible only with this model. They might work with other models, but they were trained on this model to be used with it. So all of these Loras and they shouldn't be able to work with this model. So let's see what happens. We try to use them anyways. We get an error. We remove them. We just use Illuminati Diffusion to make princes. And we got this. What we could do is we could add nfixer here. With these textual inversions are actually really important for using the Illuminati Diffusion model. They make a big difference. With nfixer, we get this. Much more realistic, much more nice style. So we can also add nreal fixer. That's supposed to give us a more realistic result. There we go. It's more realistic. Instead of that, we could use an art fixer. It's gonna be a more artistic result in that case. Here you go. More artistic, but the light is too shiny. Colors are too strong. But you could use all of them and see what happens. And we got this. So it actually does look better. And we can also use just nreal fixer. And that'll give us this, which looks like a photo and actually like a really good photo. And if we use just an art fixer, we get this. This one should probably be toned down to 0.6 maybe. There it is. Now that's much better. So this was improved into this using an art fixer. We just had to reduce its weight. And because this is a Stable Diffusion 2.1, we can use elaborate sentences to describe a whole scene and it should make sense. So princess dancing on the road under an apple tree. Castle into distance. Generate. We're going to get this. So now we got 2 princesses. So now let's just add nfixer. Try again. So now we got this, which is a princess dancing on the road under an apple tree with castle in the distance. That's sort of matches the prompt pretty well. If we try to do the same on Stable Diffusion 1.5 model, like let's pick a good model. Let's go back to main pastel. Let's just see what happens. What do you know? Actually isn't that bad. It does understand it. So we can also try another model, for example, Terrorlight's Fantasy Mix and generate. And we got this. Let's try deliberate. We got this. Refresh. We can add very bad image negative. Generate. And it turns into this. We use easy negative and we get this with easy negative. But let's say we wanted to make many images count. 18 more resolution. We want to use easy negative, but we're not really sure, so we only want to use it 1 out of every 4 generations. And then we would put like this, empty fields. Now it's going to be randoming between easy negative, empty, empty, and empty. So you get a 25% chance to get easy negative. Also, you could just put like a bad picture here. There we go. Because combining them isn't always good. But using all of them 1 by 1 or at random might be useful. We'll do 18, we'll randomize the seed. And it's finished. It took like 2 minutes. Let's say you like this one. And you would go to PNG info and you could see very bad image negative was used here. So you might try to use that one more frequently. You can also bias. I'm not sure what the syntax exactly, but you can look it up in the manual. Template syntax documentation can be found here. That's where you can find it. 0.5 double semicolon summer, 0.1 double semicolon autumn. So if I put here, bam. Now this one will only have 10% chance of appearing in this group of 4. Let's show you ControlNet a little bit. So let's go with this. Let's use this other model that didn't create that image. So we would go to image. Well, before we should go to ControlNet first. Let's show you image to image a little bit. Generate. It's gonna have denoising strength with 0.75 with nothing, and it'll just create some random stuff. So I want to say, okay, respect the influence of the image more. Now we get here. Oh, but of course it looks weird because the aspect ratio is not the same. And generate to get something more sensible. There we go. I'm gonna change a sampler to DPM++ to MCarus. This is the other sampler that I can recommend other than Lora. So very quickly, at the same number of steps, we got this. So this is the reason why I would recommend this sampler. you can get good results very quick. However, this still looks somewhat similar to our original image. So let's say we want to copy that image but not preserve that much style. So like we would do that by reducing the denoising strength, and we get an unrelated image. Like stuff of nightmares. Okay, so what do? How do we get the same composition but like a different style? Because the more we go towards there, the more we're copying the original image. So that's what ControlNet is useful for. Go down here and open the ControlNet. We could use our original image like this one. Let's completely remove this image from here, so we're not using any image as a source. I'm not sure if that works actually. No, actually we do need something as a source. We could just do this from here. Then it's text-based. Let's use this same text prompt that we used before. We can use ControlNet from here. So we would load into ControlNet. We will load this. These are the ControlNet models because we enabled 5 of them. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We first enable the first one. And first, how do we process the image? So we process it with Canny preprocessor, and then we use Canny model to guide diffusion model. So we can preview the annotated result. We can open the image in a new tab to see it in more detail. So this is the image that will be used to guide the model. We can also make it a larger resolution if we want. Preview, and now we have a bigger version of our guide. The model is only going to follow these lines, but it'll make completely new art using a completely different diffusion model to generate. It's going to take longer to process it with ControlNet. And we forgot to set the resolution. Interrupt, generate. It's finished and it looks pretty scary. Change ControlNet preprocessor and model to depth now. Depth is usually more reliable. Now I did a second Canny model to work in parallel. So we got an error because we didn't actually input the image here. You actually need to input the image for every of the ControlNet models separately. And here's the result. So it looks like this. So it's more closely following the outlines of the original image, because not all the information could be gathered from the depth map. As you can see, depth map is not so detailed when it comes to the outline of the castle, for example. We could, instead of Canny model, use a head model, which is also an edge detection, but it's a little bit different one. Canny model uses these edges as an input. Head uses different ones. The result using head instead of Canny is like this. As you can see, this fits even more closely in a way, and edge maps look like this now. So the good thing about Canny is that you can make it yourself in MS Paint even, and you could also use all of them. So you could use Canny on top of head, on top of, let's not forget to edit the image. Let's generate. Okay, it's finished. So here we go. We got another layer of detail. You could also do normal, but normal is generated from the depth, so it doesn't really contain much additional information unless you get it from a free application. We can use segmentation, so you can just see what that looks like. Here, it's not much of a difference. This is what the segmentation map is. Every color has a particular definition. If you go to this Google document address, you can find definitions for all the colors, and you can make your own segmentation maps. So to define what should be a sand, and what should be sea, what should be a wall, and so on. If you want to use ControlNet with Stable Diffusion 2.1 or Illuminati, for example, then you need to go to settings and you need to change this 1.5 to 2.1 and apply settings. You don't need to restart for this. You then need to load these beta models, and you actually need to download them separately. Let me find them for you. Okay, let's see here. And you will go to files and you will download it from here, and then you will be able to use, you will have these models. Canny here, head, and then they don't actually have head, they have both Canny and depth. So we will disable this one, and we would keep depth on depth beta, and then we can use this with Illuminati diffusion. We generate it and we get this. Yeah, because we're not using nfixer. Let's now go to show you how you can texture a 3D model exported from Blender, how you can get depth map and normal map in there. Okay, so first you would make some 3D model like this, normal map from here. This is the fastest, easiest way to get it. We also need a background, which makes sense, which is a color of a normal map. Something like this would do. You disable the floor grid and everything, and move that little dot and take a screenshot. And that's how you get it. I got my screenshot saved here. Let's disable this one as well and remove this. We will just use normal. Oh, but we need to return. Let's use Actual Mix. We need to return this to 1.5 apply settings. Load this here. It's kind of squarish, so let's use 1024. And preprocessor would now be set to none because this already is a normal map. It doesn't need to be converted to normal map, and we would use normal as a guide. And then we would use some prompts that make sense. Grass with sky background generate. So we got this, which kind of sucks, and the reason it sucks is because we forgot this this one, RGB to BGR, because normal maps that Blender generates are not exactly compatible. Normal maps that ControlNet expects, the channels is in different order. So when you do this, it will work. There we go. Now we have Suzanne here, but it's too strong for some reason. Normal maps don't usually work the greatest. We definitely have disabled the other ones. So what you could do is relax it a little bit like this, so it's less controlling. Now we got this. So we could try to use guest mode down here. Sometimes that helps. It relaxes the control, but in a more creative way somehow. So now we got this. That didn't work at all. Let's try a very strong control, generate. And now we got this. That didn't work either. I'm not really sure what to do here. Normal map is problematic. It's a little bit buggy. Doesn't always work great. Sometimes it can help. But what's more useful is mist pass, which is what depth is called in Blender. So you would go here and you would choose mist, and you would make sure to enable mist in the render settings. Well, if you want to render it, but actually just to preview it, you need to enable it to be able to change it here. Alright, then you get this option and you adjust the start at the end of the mist. Try to figure out what makes sense to not lose any details, and give it some padding, like at the end, like this. There we go. We don't want our plane here. Oh, plane actually hides the background line, so it's cool. I guess we'll keep it. So let's take a screenshot of our depth map. So depth maps work way better than normal maps. You'll use depth here. We need to invert it. So invert, save, yes, there. Now we will load it here and generate. Now we got something much more closer to what we expected. We can try to increase the CFG scale to see if that will help. Let's try to generate. Well, maybe. And let's change the sampler to cars to see what happens. Now see, now we're kind of getting what we wanted. Suzanne is textured with grass. We could try to change the model to see how a different model would handle this. Let's deliver it. Now, interesting result. Let's try to lower the guidance. So let's say 0.6. That might help give it more freedom to do something. And, well, that's not good. Okay, let's try to lower it to 0.9. Oh, that's much better. Now another thing we could try, let's like 0.93, because it's a little bit crazy. Let's put guidance end at 0.8. That should make it so that ControlNet deactivates at the 80% of the process. And so we got this. Not that much difference. Let's try guidance end at 0.4. And we got this. Okay, so that's pretty much what I was after. Maybe 0.54, because we can't really see the eyes, and 0.94. And we got this. And so you kind of like this one better, but a little bit down. Maybe this one does free generate. Now we got this. So you could keep tweaking it. 0.4492. Oh, that's perfect as far as I'm concerned. Wow, we won. Okay, excellent. So let's see just how a different model would handle this. Let's use Mena Pastel and generate. That's cool. That's awesome. I'm keeping that one. So be warned that this is way too much fun and it's very addictive. And this is why.